So we built the Coco robots to be the best autonomous vehicle for transporting goods. So it's smaller than a car, it's more compact, doesn't take up a lot of parking spaces, it helps get cars off the road and reduce our traffic and congestion and emissions in our cities. But it's big enough to fit 4 grocery bags, it can fit 8 extra large pizzas.
Yeah.
So it can do all the types of deliveries that people need in a city, but you're doing it in a much more compact, energy efficient way. So we always figured, the autonomous vehicle of the future of delivery was going to look quite different than a car.
All right, so today we're thrilled to welcome Zach Rash, co-founder and CEO of Coco, the autonomous delivery robotics company transforming last-mile delivery in cities around the world. Since 2020, Coco has grown from a scrappy idea into a category-defining robotics company, completing over 500,000 zero-emission deliveries across multiple major U.S. cities and abroad. Under Zach's leadership, they recently raised up to $110 million in backing from Sam Altman, Founders Fund, Pelion, and others. Coco is building the world's largest urban autonomous delivery fleet and redefining the future of sustainable logistics. Zach, how are you doing tonight?
Great. Welcome to Coco After Dark.
So I always have the same opening line. How are you doing today? But I think this is the first podcast I've ever done at night. So thanks for inspiring me, you, us.
Yeah, well, we were doing an event here, and Harry and I were joking that this looks like a podcast studio. This is our lobby in our office, and so now it's a podcast studio.
All right, and so usually, we have people listening to the podcast and sometimes watching on YouTube. So if they want to see our faces and the cool lobby vibe, Coco After Dark that we're going for, we spent about 20 minutes figuring out the lighting. So I think it might be worth popping over to YouTube and watching
Yeah,
this.
you definitely have to look at it. And let me know about this art piece. There was some hot takes on it. We found this at a local art studio in Santa Monica. Someone who works at the company walked through this art gallery, and all these pieces had Cocos painted in them. And so we bought a few of them, and that little pink thing in the prairie here is a Coco robot.
All right, well, if one is missing tomorrow morning, don't blame me. It might be up I do have a spot for it in my office. So
Perfect.
I last interviewed you on the Rideshare Guy podcast back in 2022. So it's been a few years, and you guys, we were just talking off air. You guys have made a ton of progress. You've landed a bunch of partnerships, fundraising. I feel like you're really on a roll. I'm excited to dig into the future of sidewalk delivery, the future of autonomous delivery, and everything that you're building. But first, give us, I feel like everyone's probably seen a Coco robot at this point, but tell us about the state of the business, where you guys are at, and, kind of how you're doing.
Yeah, so we built the Coco robots to be the best autonomous vehicle for transporting goods. So it's smaller than a car, it's more compact, doesn't take up a lot of parking spaces, it helps get cars off the road and reduce our traffic and congestion and emissions in our cities. But it's big enough to fit 4 grocery bags, it can fit 8 extra large pizzas.
Yeah.
So it can do all the types of deliveries that people need in a city, but you're doing it in a much more compact, energy efficient way. So we always figured, the autonomous vehicle of the future of delivery was going to look quite different than a car. So it's a big tub on wheels. It can go on the sidewalks, and then in some areas it can actually go on the road and bike lanes to go at higher speeds. So you can think of it as we're attempting to basically build eventually it should approach the performance of an e-bike courier, right? Where they can kind of weave through traffic. They can go right up to the door of the restaurant to get the food, and then they can really nail that handoff experience with the customer. So we started this in 2020. We're partnered with most of the major delivery platforms like Uber and DoorDash here in the US. And we're live across all of the LA area and Chicago, Miami, Helsinki, Finland, and have a number of cities both in the US and Europe coming up soon.
Very cool. Awesome. And I feel like, I saw recently you guys had a big fundraising announcement. Well, I know it's been a few months now, but I feel like there's almost like a second wave coming now of sidewalk delivery robots. Do you feel the same way? And if so, what's behind that?
There's two things, I think there's two things at a macro level that have been happening. One is, I think the need for this sort of solution has become much larger in the last few years. You have in major cities, you have a lot of pressures on cost of living and affordability that are headwinds to continuing to grow delivery. Right, it's just really expensive, and it's such an awesome service. It's super convenient. DoorDash and Uber Eats are awesome services. But if we want to keep growing this or accelerate the growth rate of these services and make it more affordable, more accessible to people, the cost needs to come down.
Yeah.
And one of the obvious tools to do this is to complement and supplement human drivers with autonomous delivery vehicles. So I think there's been an increased need for this sort of technology. At the same time, the technology is clearly becoming capable, and there's clearly been this step function change in AI and the sort of technology that powers all of this. First it was ChatGPT, clearly showed there's a big step function change in the tech. And then you had Waymos go from, this R&D project that's been going on for over a decade to all of a sudden you see Waymos everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a time when you need a solution, and the technology is clearly there, and the time is now to invest in this. So I think that's causing a big robot wave in general. Humanoids, self-driving cars, delivery vehicles, I think all types of robotics. I think that's going to be a huge wave. There's been
robots in general are hot and all the rage right now. How do you guys fit into these different categories? Do you consider yourself autonomous vehicles, robotics, or does it kind of depend on who or what or where you're talking?
Yeah, people have different definitions. I think generally there's the thesis that people are building towards of the humanoid robot, which is this general purpose robot that can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the best in the world at any given thing, but it is human level, aspirationally human level capability at a lot of things, so that you as a person living in your house could buy one, and it gives enough utility for you to be worth the 20,000, 30,000, however much it costs. We're in the other category where we're very specialized at saying, how do we build the best type of robot to do logistics?
Yeah.
Right. And today that's a lot of groceries, food, a little bit of retail items, but in the future, that's anything and everything moving around our cities. And you obviously want something that's super power efficient, can travel longer distances on very low power, can carry a lot of weight, and is ultra low cost, right? So you want something that's a few $1,000s, not tens of thousands of dollars.
Got it.
If you're moving pizzas, and you want it to be extremely energy efficient, so you don't want to have a bunch of actuators where you run down the street. We'd like to roll down the street. So I think you'll see that trend in a bunch of different areas. You'll have the more general purpose, and then you'll have more specialized robots, and I think both will grow very quickly.
Yeah. So you guys are in that specialized robot category, it sounds like, doing last mile delivery. And when I walked into your office just now, I've seen them many times before, but I feel like every time I see them, it's a lot bigger than I realized. Have they gotten bigger over time too? How has the product evolved, maybe from, kind of an operations, from a product standpoint, over the last few years?
Yeah. So the design constraint, how we designed the vehicle was, you want to be able to fit, it doesn't have to fit every type of order possible, but you want to probably fit at least 90% of the types of orders that happen, right? So that has
food
to cover
delivery
for I'd say for on-demand use cases, right? And so that's typically food, groceries, things that you're ordering more frequently.
Yeah.
So you're not going to do a big order, once a month or something like that.
You said 4 grocery bags can fit in. That's pretty hefty, right? That's most orders, I would say.
Right. So you want to make it enough to fit most of the types of things. But you also want it to be about human shoulder width.
Yeah.
So you're not taking up too much space on the sidewalk. You need to let people pass. You don't want to be an obstruction. And it's important to be able to use the sidewalks, because the merchant is not going to want to have to walk into the street and look for your robot somewhere, right? The kind of current full-size self-driving model.
Not always somewhere to park in the street. Sidewalk's a little easier to pull right up.
So there's a lot of the minutes of a delivery, are finding parking and then walking to go pick up food from the merchant, right? So we don't want to put all that time onto the restaurant. They do not have time to do this, right? And they're never going to adopt technology like this if it makes their lives a lot harder. It's already a very difficult job. So we designed the system to say, how do we make this actually a good experience for the merchant, and something where they can feel like they take back a little bit more control of the front of the house of the restaurant and who's coming into the restaurant, and they can kind of create a little bit more order, but isn't a lot of extra work. So most of our merchants will prep the food. If they're really busy, they might take out multiple orders at once, and they just drop them into a couple robots. They go back inside, and the robots take off. So it's really important to have a vehicle that can appropriately and safely fit on the sidewalks. So yeah, you're about human shoulder width. You want it to be about the weight of a human. So you're around 100 pounds, right? You don't want hundreds of pounds, and you don't want it to be so large that it's not really safe or appropriate to be on the sidewalks.
Got it. And the robots, are they driven autonomously today, or does it depend on the city, the order, or the destination?
So the way we always started was, we wanted to be when we started the company, we wanted to be very good at the teleoperation side, which are the remote drivers driving these. And the reason that was important is because the clear trend in AI is to train these systems what's called end-to-end. So instead of creating a map of the world and using a bunch of LiDAR and creating a 3D map and then saying, what is the least likely to hit something path that I can draw through this map? And let me
Yeah.
just do that, 20 times a second. The current state-of-the-art approach that most people are doing now is you take all the raw sensor data in, so you take all the camera data, you take the acceleration, you take the how fast the wheels are moving, you take all that information in and you directly output what would a good driver do in this situation. And we have one of the largest data sets ever of robots interacting in the real world, especially on the sidewalk, where you have a very unstructured, very dynamic environment that has a lot of like social cues and important things, right? We're driving by storefronts, we're driving in residential areas. You have a lot of
What kind
people
of
interact
volume
with.
have you guys done over the past years in terms of number of robots or deliveries, or what have you guys talked about?
So we have about 1,000 vehicles, say over 1,000 vehicles today.
Mhm.
We're kicking off mass production of our next vehicle, which we'll unveil soon. That one will make about 10,000 for next year. So in terms of data scale, we're looking at many millions of
Yeah.
miles of
Hundreds of thousands of deliveries.
yeah, I mean probably around 1 million deliveries now
Yeah.
and millions of miles of trip data. So that data set, not just the video data set, but like how does a very high quality driver, human in the loop,
Mhm.
how do they handle that situation? What's the right way to navigate that?
Mhm.
And understanding what data to train on and how to train the system to handle those situations autonomously, that's been the key. So right now where we're at is we have some hybrid system where you can have the system drive autonomously, but we're really good at context switching in a
Mm.
human to make sure that the delivery goes without delays.
And how does that context switching happen? If it runs into a situation, I mean, it's only going a few miles an hour, it can just pull over to the side? Because I think that's one of the challenges when you start increasing the speed, right? I mean, I think one of the reasons why we saw Waymo took so long to launch on the freeways is because you can't just pull over on the side of the road if something goes wrong. Even if you're going 20, 30, 15 miles an hour, you have some flexibility. When you're going 70, things get, or I guess 65, because they follow the speed limit here in
Yes.
California. It gets a little dicey.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I go back to of like we didn't start by saying let's make this thing fully autonomous and then
Mhm.
humans can take over when it fails and it's like someone in the office who can jump
Mhm.
on it, right? We are very good at a product level of
Mhm.
how do we present information to the humans so that they can solve whatever the task is, they can intervene, they know what city they're in, they know the rules of the road in that city, they understand why the autonomy system failed, they understand how to recover it,
Mhm.
and that happens in seconds.
Got it.
If that doesn't take seconds, this doesn't really solve anything. If the
Mhm.
food's cold, there's no amount of autonomy that like, no
Mhm.
one's gonna use the product if it's like fully autonomous, but the food's always cold. So that needs to be done really in a really deliberate
Mhm.
fashion. And how we control the ratio of vehicles on the roads to the human operators is based on, the average delay caused by
Mhm.
autonomy interruptions, as well as the 90th percentile, the 99th
Yeah.
percentile. So we look at kind of all the worst cases and we say, let's make sure the food's still on time within a reasonable bound.
So is it fair to say that you guys do a hybrid operation, or how do you describe it?
Yeah, and I think it'll always be a hybrid. You just
Mhm.
eventually want, if you have millions of robots, you're going to
Mhm.
want,
Less and
pretty high
less.
leverage humans in the loop who are doing a lot more high level problem solving.
One thing I've noticed in the autonomous vehicle space, there seems to be this, I don't know about it's fear or apprehension. People don't want to say that things are teleoperated, right? Because it's like, oh, then it's not autonomous. Seems like you're open to that. I mean, Waymo, for example, they say that, if the car gets stuck, they're very deliberate about saying that, they're not teleoperated, but a teleoperator will come on and it will tell the AV where to go. It'll draw a line or, kind of on the path. And I don't know, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, to me, it seems like, as long as it can safely, if it's in a parking lot, doesn't know how to get in, what's the big deal about having a teleoperator help it out? And like some situations humans are great at, and, maybe AVs will be great at that in the future. But right now, there's obviously a lot of areas they can help.
I have no idea why that's like such a contrarian thing to talk about. That was a unique part about our pitch, and like in the early days, I had investors tell me like, oh, cool. So you're doing it in the way where it's like the super low tech way. So you're
Hmm.
not really a tech company. You're more like an ops, like a traditional operations
Hmm.
business. And that to me was just so crazy because I'm like, okay, we're still building
Yeah.
like a robot that's streaming data globally around the
Hmm.
world, and we have to build a whole routing and dispatch system and map system. I mean, it's at least as technically
Yeah.
complicated as building like a human career tech company. In many ways, you have to recreate a lot of that stuff. So, but to me, that was always the right sequencing, right? Because again, with hot food, you are so sensitive to time and
Hmm.
delays, and we're operating in the most chaotic parts of the world. We're operating in the downtowns of cities and the
Yeah.
city centers, and these are the most lively places we have in the world, and they're extremely unstructured, especially on the sidewalks.
Hmm.
And so but I still need to get you your food in 15 minutes,
Yeah.
or you will not use my service. And so that can be, a lot of that driving can be solved very reliably with AI today. But having that human in the loop is both economical and good from a quality of service standpoint, and you can work both of those in. I just think people have this like, feels like you're faking it if there's like a human involved whatsoever. I see this on the humanoid side too, where it's like, you'll see a robot like running or something or doing some task, and people are like, oh, but was it teleoperated? And it's like, teleops has nothing to do with like how impressive the motor control of that humanoid doing that running task or like hill climbing task or something is.
I'm on your side because, I mean, I think there's a lot of these situations where, I did an interview recently in the driverless trucking space. And, I mean, I think AVs are great at driving down the road 70 miles an hour. And then when you get to the, where the drop off point, like have a human there, they get in there, they back it up. I think it's called a hitch and a tow or something like that, a hitch and a post. And, when they have to do these very complex, tight turns, navigations, in, out, like that seems like the perfect hybrid. Maybe AV could do that in the future, but I don't think you need to solve that piece of it now.
Yeah, and everyone is heavily using teleops. It's just like no one really wants to talk about it. I don't know if it ruins the magic or whatnot, but it's like that operations in the background is like a material part of the operations business. And it's something you need to be really good at. Like that matters a lot, and like, if you've ever had a human intervention in a Waymo, like they're really good at it. You just don't talk about it.
But are your teleoperators, are they based, here in your office, or do you think it's possible to use folks, in other parts of the country or other parts of the world when it comes to teleoperations?
We've had a lot of different thoughts on this. So it started as me and my co-founder Brad did all the deliveries. Actually, before you came, we were just doing a lot of driving.
I think I saw a couple robots moving around when I came up.
Just making sure I still got it. But then it turned into all of our college friends. So, we started this at UCLA, like, in Westwood, and we kind of yelled out the window to all of our neighbors being like, this literally happened. Brad yelled out the window. He's like, does anyone want to help me drive a robot? And our neighbors were like, sure.
Yeah.
And they recruited their college friends. We had kind of this US like college network.
Cool.
And now that we're operating in multiple countries, we have a system where any operator in any country, in any city can actually operate any robot in any city. That gives you obvious like staffing advantages because you have like a global supply base. But you do lose some context. Like it's a little disorienting to go from like, Chicago in the winter to then Miami in the summer to then like, you're in a Finnish forest and it's like dark out, like this. And Finland's got different driving rules. Like the bike lanes in Finland are on the sidewalk in Helsinki.
Oh, really?
So you actually have a designated lane that you have to stay in on the sidewalk before you even get to the road. So, we do a lot of work on the product to present that information to the teleoperator so they have all that context. But you are like switching them around a lot. So we might become more localized over time, but from a like labor efficiency perspective, you do kind of want a global pool.
So taking a step back more broadly, autonomous delivery, you mentioned, we've talked about Waymo, we've talked about DoorDash. I mean, I guess Waymo and DoorDash are a partner. I think they're live now in Phoenix doing these DashMart deliveries, which is their kind of ghost store, right, where you can kind of get more convenience type items delivered. What do you think about the autonomous delivery space and, maybe kind of in the context of versus rideshare too?
Yeah, so I think they're very different problems. It's like a similar technology, but a very different product challenge and a very different customer experience they're trying to solve for. So obviously on the delivery side, you have, two different kind of customers, right? You have the merchant and you have that end customer getting the food. Rideshare is just that one user. One thing that I've found interesting is in the rideshare side of things, it's been, I think surprising in my own preferences and I think from people I talk to where the experience of sitting in a Waymo is so awesome. It's a new car, it's clean, you kind of have the whole space to yourself if you're doing a meeting or you're going somewhere with your friends. So it's such an awesome experience in the car, and that's such an overwhelming number of the minutes of the experience is sitting in the car. So even if it takes a different route or if it's following the speed limit and going slower or you have a maybe inconvenient pickup or drop off, and that's all getting a lot better. But even with that, a lot of people still have a preference for a Waymo ride. In the delivery space, it's very different because those minutes of travel, the user is not engaged. And so they do not they don't care if the ride of the food inside the robot is really pleasant. They care a lot that the food arrives in the condition they expect. It's warm, it's correct, and they care that it arrives on time. And they care that handoff experience is really good. So you basically just have to make no mistakes, but you can't there's not that many opportunities to add all these like wow experiences like you could in the 20 minutes you're sitting in a Waymo.
You know, what's funny, I've never actually thought about that, but you're right. When you're in the rideshare, when you're in an autonomous vehicle like a Waymo, for example, I mean, it's kind of a good experience. Like, obviously, it goes a little slower, it follows the speed limits, and it's not, maybe it wouldn't do exactly what you want, but it's such a great experience that you also still end up going from A to B, right? So it's like, if it takes longer, not a big deal. Kind of like I've joked when, if you're in a really nice hotel or you take a business class flight to Japan or something like that, right? It's like, it's a nice flight. Like, does it really, I don't
Yeah.
care if it's a long one, right? Because I don't really want it to end, right? If it's something really nice or fancy. I haven't actually thought about that before. You're right.
Yeah. So we don't have that opportunity. So I think the bar to set a good experience for the customer is a lot higher, which makes it challenging. And then there's all these other parts that, that you still, in rideshare, you have the pickup and the drop off, right? And those are hard, and autonomous vehicles that can be difficult. But for food, I think it's even more sensitive, particularly on the merchant side. Like, I was saying earlier, if you don't pick up in exactly the right spot, I mean, the merchant's going to like hate using the service, right? So the precision of the pickup, the precision of the timing of the pickup, because we're not like running into the store and sitting there and waiting for them and grabbing the food. We do need to have that relationship with the merchant, and we need to make sure that's a good experience. So that handoff needs to be done really well. And that's one of the reasons we designed the robot the first day of our business, like Brad and I took a prototype robot we built in our living room and brought it to a restaurant. It was Alfalfa on Main Street in Santa Monica. And then we had L&K Market, which is the kind of corner store, convenience store, liquor store on Main Street. And we built the product with them. And they gave us a ton of feedback early on. The product barely worked, but we knew what they actually wanted and how to build that experience. And the tiny details of that matter a lot. Because if somebody, we have high volume restaurants that might load 200 orders a day into a robot, that experience matters a lot. And then
how do they load it in? Do they type a code in, or what do they do?
So we've created different experiences for different types of users, right? If you do 200 a day, you're kind of a power user at that point, and we let you pick and assign robots. So you can actually do the first order I have ready can go into any robot, and we'll give you like a taxi line. It's kind of like, how Uber would build like an airport model is different than your typical pickup experience. So that like enterprise restaurants or ghost kitchens, that's typically the experience. But then if you have like a mom and pop that might do an order every few days with us, like that needs to be a very different experience. We're not optimizing for, high frequency use. We're optimizing for it to be reliable and very intuitive and require the kind of the least work possible. So in that experience, there's a code, you punch in the code, you open it up, and you don't really do anything. You have, we're assigning the robot, we're putting it there, and your tablet will tell you to go load it. Those things need to be done really well. Every small error on that experience is just such a bad experience for the merchant, and so you need to be really excellent there to have the merchants love you and want to continue using this.
Yeah, so one thing we've seen with delivery, I think you touched on it. I mean, it's expensive to get a human to go to a restaurant, pick up your food, and then drop it off at your house, right? Like, it's kind of a lot of work for that human. And then obviously they're sitting in between. And obviously a lot of people complain about the high cost of food delivery. They're still using it. I think DoorDash is doing quite well, but as a company, but people still use it. And I think the first thing that stood out to me, because I kind of know all the stats, I've done DoorDash, I've done Uber Eats, I've delivered food, right? We cover it a lot on the rideshare guy. I think over 50% of a courier's pay is actually tips.
Yeah.
When you do autonomous delivery, you don't have to tip. I think that is, I haven't really seen many people talking about that.
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons for that. I mean, in our European business, this is also different. There's just not there's not an expectation
No tipping in Europe.
of tipping. So that's like less of a benefit that you can kind of market from an affordability perspective. I think the other challenge is right now, the experience, if you would order on Uber Eats or DoorDash and you get assigned to a Coco robot for that delivery, you're still checking out with the higher price.
Right.
And then if you get matched, your tip will be refunded.
Right.
So from like a, elasticity perspective, you're not actually producing more demand because it's like maybe you'll be delighted that it's a little bit cheaper.
Might hit the jackpot.
But you've already like committed to that amount.
There's
You've already
still a couple other fees.
You've already clicked order and said this is how much I'm spending, and you're
you're
already feeling the pain of that, and then the refund is kind of like happens later if you look at your credit card statement. So over time, though, I think we want to make sure that we can create an extremely reliable service with our partners where, if we say we can do a delivery in X minutes, we can always
I mean, that's
do
like
that.
a big lever to pull in the future to, you're right. Right now, it's kind of a surprise and people don't bake that in. So they're not ordering more because of that, right? The elasticity. But in the future, if, it's like, hey, you are going to get this refund, right? Even if it was based on like an average of, let's say, 6 out of 10 orders, and then 6 out of the 10
Yeah.
customers, we give that, the other four, we don't, right? It
Yeah.
might still work.
Yeah, and this is ultimately up to our partners and how
Mm,
their marketplace dynamics, and different partners are going to have different philosophies on this. But our job is to deliver an incredibly reliable service, and do so at a price point that gives them the
hmm
leverage to do these sort of things, whether it's on the merchant side, the customer side, their own margins to run a better service, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But today, we can profitably do our deliveries at a much lower cost than a human courier. I mean,
Yeah.
particularly in like a Los Angeles, right, where California, the cost for cost of living here is just so high
hmm
that, and you have Prop 22, and you have some of these regulatory frameworks where the amount of pay going to a courier per delivery is from a consumer standpoint is quite high. So we're already much lower than that,
Yeah.
and so our job is just to give reliable service and give the kind of affordability levers to our partners to then work their marketplace magic for their customers.
Yeah. I thought delivery has always been very interesting, right? Because you think about rideshare, you've got people delivering in 20, 30, 40, or in Waymo's case, $75,000 vehicles plus all the hardware and sensors. And obviously the cost, the average order value is higher on rideshare, maybe 2, 3x than delivery. But, when you're delivering, right, you might be on an e-bike, for
Yeah,
example, right? Or
yeah.
you might be, I'm guessing your robots are a lot cheaper. So I have to imagine, the unit economics, I don't know what they look like, but it sounds like, can you talk a little, like, what are the margins on some of these deliveries, or how many deliveries you guys need to do how do the financial piece work out?
Yeah, so I mean, you can think about our costs are in two categories, right? You
Mhm.
have and these are loose categorizations, but you have your fixed costs and you have your
Right.
variable costs. The fixed costs is the cost of the vehicle that you're
Mhm.
depreciating, and then it's all the things that go into the total cost of ownership. So charging, cleaning, maintaining, repairs. You got to store parts in each
Yeah.
market, right? You have to manage a supply chain, and then the reverse logistics on
Mm.
those parts. So you have all the day-to-day and the month-to-month management of
Yeah.
the fleet, and then you have the cell data,
Mhm.
which is material, right? We run 3 SIM cards on every vehicle. We're always streaming data on 2 carriers to
Mm.
make sure that the signal's very reliable. It's a lot of data. So yeah, so you got the hardware cost, all the fleet management costs, and then the cell data cost. Then you have other stuff like insurance and
Mhm.
and some of these other fees, property taxes, so on. And then you have your variable costs, which are part of the repairs are variable, right? If you drive more, your tires are going to wear down more. But largely, the variable costs would be your teleoperators or
Mm.
any human in the loop, right? And so as the vehicles get more and more autonomous, that cost drives to zero, very close to
The
zero,
variable.
pretty quickly. Yeah, the variable side. And then the fixed side is what you're left with, right?
Mhm.
And that is a matter of how do I make this at the right price and then
Yeah.
drive a ton of utilization through it.
Right.
And that's where I think the human ride share, and you talk a lot about this, but the human courier side of the marketplace
Mhm.
and the autonomous vehicle side of the marketplace are very different and have very
Yeah.
different incentives. So when you put an autonomous vehicle on the network, you kind of want it to do the base load
Mhm.
capacity, where it is kind of just doing trips all day,
Right.
every day, rain or shine,
Might as
all
well.
weather conditions. But we're not as good at flexing up to like meet 7 p.m.
Mhm.
demand, for dinner, right? And
Well,
food delivery's got huge
food delivery,
peaks,
yeah, I was food
huge
delivery has
peaks.
always had much stronger peaks, right? DoorDash and Uber Eats, and DoorDash especially, right, has always had more of a scheduling system, right, for Dashers. Like, they want you to schedule their hours because they kind of need to control the supply a little bit more than, like rideshare. I mean, Uber Eats does this too, but, you can kind of log on whenever and wherever you
Yeah.
want, right?
Yeah. So I think that's why, these hybrid networks are really powerful
Mhm.
of human gig workers that can come on and flex up and earn a lot during dinner. But the robots provide that base capacity, and
Got it.
I think those two things combined make the ecosystem costs overall a lot lower.
Mhm.
I think that grows the pie a lot. I think that's like great for robots, and I think that's also great for driver earnings, and I think it
Mhm.
will continue to grow the overall marketplace. But yeah, and we've gotten to the point now we have thousands of merchants using our vehicles
Mhm.
across these different platforms. So we're now getting to the point where we will have vehicles just nonstop driving the whole day throughout the city, and they'll kind
Yeah.
of go between these different neighborhoods. Like we have, one of our densest deployments is the Westwood, Sawtelle,
Mhm.
Brentwood, kind of that West LA pocket.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people there. We have a lot of restaurants there, and
Mhm.
so like all those vehicles we deploy there are driving all day.
Got it.
So we get really good utilization. And so then if you get really good utilization, The thing you need to be very good at is you need to make sure this is not like, materially more expensive than a car or than an e-bike, right? So it needs to be a few $1,000s. If it's tens of thousands of dollars and you're trying to transport $10 or $15 of food, it's really hard to make the math work, even if the utilization is really high. Passengers are a little bit easier, and the vehicle should be more expensive for passengers. You're traveling at higher speeds. You have a lot more safety requirements and redundancy requirements because of the safety risks involved. But the lower speed vehicles that are much lighter weight, your planning horizon's a lot shorter, your stopping distance is a lot shorter. So all of that should fundamentally make the vehicle much cheaper to make, and that ultimately gives us a much lower cost.
So the vehicle cost is an order of magnitude lower, and you're using a hybrid autonomous and, human system, but over time, maybe the human system, goes towards zero, hopefully. It seems like, those, either one would be, more efficient from a unit economics basis, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the combination, is there a, 100 deliveries it needs to hit? And how do you think about that utilization? Like, we want our robots doing 1 delivery an hour, 5 to 10 a day. And then once they get to 100, we're looking good? Or how do you think about that?
It's probably about right. 1 an hour is would be pretty good with no batching. So today we don't do any batching. So when we pick up an order, we go to the customer and we go pick up the next order. We will never pick up 2 orders and then do 2 drops.
Yeah.
And that's not like a religious thing. If we could do that and make it a great experience, we will. That is like a necessary evil of food delivery because the economics just do not work if you don't do batching. So we might introduce hardware eventually that does batching for the right types of orders if we can really guarantee a good customer experience. Because right now our economics are good enough where we don't need to do batching, so we are not. So I think that without batching, 1 to 1.5 is kind of the most efficient.
I'm not a fan of batching. As a customer, if I put my customer hat on, I pay the $3 on the DoorDash. I think DoorDash only charges $3. It's a pretty good deal. I pay the $3 on DoorDash every time. Though, once in a while when I'm feeling a little cheap, or I say, the restaurant's it's pretty close, I'll probably get it first. I think I had one the other day. They did 2 deliveries before they got to me. And I think the unique thing about food delivery is, you talked about rideshare. You always get from A to B, right? Whether it's an AV, even if it's a human, even if it's not a great driver, he doesn't drop you off around the corner. Usually 99.9% of the time you get to your destination. It may not be the exact experience you want or the price or whatever it might be. With food delivery, it goes from A to B, but A to B matters plus the time, right? You've mentioned time a couple times. If I'm ordering something hot, burger, fries are some of the most common orders, right, on a lot of these big platforms, fast food, QSR. Every minute, the food quality is literally deteriorating, right?
Yeah, and this is, I think you mentioned this, you can pay like a priority fee, right? You can pay $3 or $4 more to get your food delivered to you with no batching. You can guarantee no batching by paying more. This is kind of what I'm saying by giving a lower cost structure, like a fundamentally lower cost structure to our partners. They can choose how to use this lever. Like another way you could do this is you could look at this as like, this could become the premium option without that fee, right? Rather than being a lower cost option, that our partners could choose to say, hey, we can control that the robot can offer you the same, at the same price, we can offer you a guaranteed no batching experience, right? So there's a lot of leverage you can do if you have a fundamentally lower cost structure on these subset of deliveries. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that. And the time in the robot's incredibly important to the customer.
So I'd like to end on where you and Coco fit into the ecosystem of on-demand and delivery. You've mentioned a few times, you mentioned your partners with DoorDash and Uber Eats. You also mentioned restaurants. Sounds like, are you also partnered with restaurants? Or, how do you guys fit into this ecosystem?
Yeah, so, ultimately we want to build an extremely reliable logistics system that can move anything and everything around our cities. So that might be restaurants, that could be retailers directly, that could be packages, and then that's the large marketplaces. And so we partner with anyone who has a delivery need, and it's a fundamentally pretty similar product, right?
Yeah.
We need to pick it up at a certain time, you need to make sure it fits into the vehicle, and then you need to drop it off at a certain time. And if you can do that affordably and at a high quality, people will use it. We started really focusing on food just because the perishable nature of food is what makes it so expensive to deliver. Because you're so sensitive to the timing and batching and the typical things you can do with the package or with mail or like an Amazon truck, right? Is you can do 100 deliveries at a time because it's time sensitive for the customer, but it's not perishable.
I
Food
like
is
that. Time
perishable.
sensitive, but not perishable.
Perishable is just way more expensive, and it's a way harder logistics system to set up. So we started there because it was the area where we felt like, hey, even when we have a high ratio of teleoperators, we probably, with software efficiencies and a super low cost vehicle,
Yeah.
we can make a difference on the cost of this. And then as it's gotten more and more autonomous, I think there's more and more categories where we're price competitive. And then over time, as it trends to zero variable costs, all fixed costs, you ultimately are aligned with the local, if you look at the local economy and the local, all the different retailers in that area, you are aligned with them of saying, this is some asset we've put into your neighborhood. How do we add as much value as possible to all of these different retailers? And that will fundamentally lower our costs because you're amortizing that same hardware over more and more trips. And so we are aligned with all these retailers. If the more they use it, the more use cases they can think of, our costs continue to come down.
Yeah.
And that's not true for human delivery because there are limits to how many people are willing to do that job. So in the limit, if we make millions of robots and put them in all these markets, they can start doing more and more useful work that will continue to lower the cost because we can keep producing more and our costs get lower when we produce more. And I think ultimately that's going to make the cost of all this stuff extremely low. And I think that's going to be, really good for the convenience and affordability of these services. These services are amazing.
Yeah.
And if more people have access to them more frequently, I think that's a very good thing. And then it's really good for our local economy. A lot of things get delivered by Amazon or other retailers that are in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so if you can keep a lot of those dollars more local by making it more, making it affordable and cost competitive to ordering from one of the bigger retailers that are doing it in some warehouse outside of the city, I think that's really good for the local economy. It keeps it keeps that flavor of culture in your community. And I think that's probably what most people want in their cities. And this technology should make that happen.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I think that all makes sense. And, when it comes to, so are you partnering with some of these restaurants and retailers directly?
Yeah.
I mean, you can, maybe get matched on DoorDash or Uber Eats, it sounds like, through the restaurant, right? But it's through the partner, and then others you partner directly. Do you have a preference, or you'll take anything and everything? I mean, I know there's a big debate right now, on the food delivery side, right? With restaurants, obviously, they want to be serving orders themselves, but it's nice popping on a DoorDash or Uber Eats and you get a ton of demand, and they charge a high commission, but they're obviously offering a lot of value through their customers.
We want to be great partners for everyone, and so we're kind of agnostic, and we just want to be available to as many people. And the more partners we have, the more efficiency we get from the fleet, the lower the cost gets, the faster our pickup times get. So this becomes a bit of a flywheel in a market where we can offer a higher quality service at a lower price, and that can keep going by the more people who use it. So, we've been working with Uber for over a year now. We've been working with DoorDash for a few years. We've announced a few weeks ago, we've been working with DashMart.
Cool.
We've done tens of thousands of orders with them across LA, Chicago, and Miami.
I guess there's also the adjacent categories, but I guess my real question is, it's kind of Uber and DoorDash are the main partners. I think there's been, over the past 5+ years, there's been a big push, to help restaurants do first-party delivery and all these different tech tools and services. I don't know that they've really taken off. It sounds like that would be probably a good thing for them, but it's tough running a restaurant, and then it's tough doing delivery. It seems like, things are maybe gravitating towards Uber and DoorDash. Is that what you're saying?
We're giving them the tools to do if they want to invest in their own digital ecosystem and use our robots to do the deliveries. They have access to it, and they have access to that same technology that Uber and DoorDash have. But ultimately, they need to create a compelling value proposition. They need to want to do this.
Yeah.
And we do have some that do that. We've been working with Sweetfin here in LA for years, and we're integrated into the Sweetfin app, and they have their own loyalty program on there, and they've invested in that. And they have a great marketing campaigns. They have great food. And that's been a great brand we've been working with, and we did deeply integrate with their first party experience. That's something they cared about, and they were able to drive actually good demand and good retention through that. So we'll support that, but ultimately, we'll make the service available to everyone, and then the customer will ultimately decide where they want to order from and what experience is the best.
Yeah.
And that's not for us to decide, and we got to do our part from getting from A to B.
Definitely. All right. So last question, good one to end on. What verticals? All right. So last question, good one to end on. What are you most excited for about in the future of Coco? Is it new autonomous delivery verticals that you're going to be expanding into, new products? Where do you think your kind of real excitement lies in the sort of years ahead?
I think there's a bunch of cool product stuff in the future that we're going to announce. A few a few of the areas that we're investing a lot into. I mean, the first one is just being able to increase our speeds. So driving faster creates a better customer experience. It gives us better utilization because we can kind of pick up from a wider range, wider radius of different merchants with the same vehicle. Speed is always a good thing. So what does it take to go faster? Well, you need to do more road driving. You need to have a vehicle that's, more capable in the roads, has a better suspension system, has higher top speeds, and you need to be able to do all that very safely and reliably. So that's an area that we're really excited about that I think is going to expand the kind of total addressable market of these types of vehicles and improve the customer experience. Longer term, I think there's a lot of really interesting things happening in the world of both AI and the hardware side, where you can make these vehicles a lot more capable to solve some of these experiences. Think if you could actually pick up an order off the shelf yourself, or you could open a door, you could go upstairs. I think there's a lot of things where the tech's actually getting there.
Yeah.
It's not yet affordable, but I think it's getting to the point where we could economically make the vehicle a lot more capable to make the customer experience and the merchant experience a lot better. And I think that's inevitably the direction this goes.
Very cool. When I did my orientation for DoorDash in Orange County, it was in person. That's how long ago I signed up to be a Dasher, about 10, 11 years ago. I remember someone in the group asked a question, do we need to take the order to the door? And they said, dude, it's in the name. DoorDash. Yes, you need to take the order to the door. So I think that'll be cool if there's robots in the future, not only are picking up, delivering, and maybe even going upstairs, or
we would love to take it to your door.
Navigating what they have to do to take it to your door, and no tipping, and
that'll happen. Like, we will be able to get it to your
Yeah.
door. It is a very hard engineering problem, but like ultimately that's the beauty of robots, is you can create this product that will work in all weather conditions, all times a day, all times a year. It's ultra reliable, and it will drop it off at the exact right place, exactly when you want. And I think that's like aspirationally our whole product roadmap is to do that. And it's a really hard problem. Ultimately, it can be achieved, and I think that's going to create a really great customer experience.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to hear about the future, and we'll definitely have you on the podcast again. Appreciate first episode of Coco After
Yeah, thanks
Dark
for coming.
in the books. And if folks want to learn more about what you're up to or Coco, can they go to the website? What's a good spot for them?
Yeah, cocodelivery.com. And then our socials are some combination of Coco Robotics. And
All right. I think I've been tagging a couple
Coco.robot.
good Instagram posts. So whoever's running the Instagram account, I think they're doing a good job. So
trying to get our content frequency going.
all right, Zach, appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.